Hello and welcome to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. We have Randy Buehler in the red zone. In our feature match, two-time Grand Prix champion Seth Manfield playing against, right on camera there, Rune Andersen from Denmark.
And he looks perpetually displeased if you look at his...
That's normal for him?
Yeah, his player profile picture too. He's just like slightly disgruntled. Probably because he's not had a chance to cast Brainstorm in this format at all.
Seth Manfield kind of has the look of concern there. But they are just underway here in their feature now. Seth is he's playing Esper Control. Yeah,
and it looks like Seth's on the play, and he leads off. And neither player playing anything on turn one is a lot better for Seth than it is for Rune here.
No Scryland for Seth on turn one, but he's got one on turn two.
Which means he had to have drawn it. There's no way he would have played it on turn not on turn one otherwise.
Okay.
And given the way the lands are made up in the Esper deck, you can actually get a decent amount of information off what your opponent has by how they play their lands. If your Esper opponent ever plays an island on turn one, they don't have any Scrylands or dual lands.
Right.
So that is definitely something you have to watch out for. Look, 2 Scrylands in a row.
So a Scavenging Ooze here for Rune. And, double Scryland in a row there for Seth Manfield. And looks like Scavenging Ooze is going to get to start to do some amount of work here, though there are multiple cards that Seth can have in his hand. Does Seth run Azorius Charms?
Yeah, Seth does, in fact, have 2 Azorius Charms, which is actually kind of the standard now.
Is it? Yeah, I've seen that it's fluctuated a lot. It used to be an automatic 4 of, but it's not anymore.
No, Azorius Charm is competing now with cards like Last Breath and Doomblade, which are getting a little more traction. And all the Scrylands mean that you have more to do with your mana in the early games. Because playing a Scryland essentially counts as paying a mana.
Right.
I mean, I used to play 4 Azorius Charms in every deck, and now I'm much happier just playing the 2.
Okay. And Courser of Kruphix reveals the potentially bad news for Seth Manfield here. It's a Rakdos's Return.
Yeah, and the Rakdos Return is a it's a big card, and revealing it is really not what you want to do.
No. Now, just to be clear, that was a Courser of Kruphix revealing it off the top of Rune Andersen's library, meaning he just drew it for the turn. He also doesn't have black mana currently as Supreme Verdict sweeps away both creatures. And Seth has to be pretty stoked to be sitting here with a creatureless board, no relevant permanents on the board outside of lands, and Rune Andersen having just drawn a card he can't. He can cast now. Does he fire it off for 2 here? It's half of Seth Manfield's hand.
I mean, the only way he does that if his hand isn't good, whereas, playing something like Xenagos is a much, much better, whereas that's one of the reasons that Seth can't be that happy. I mean, verdicting for a 2-for-1 is nice, but when Rune's follow-up is a Planeswalker and he's got a Rakdos Return in hand, Seth's kind of in a bind here.
Okay, so let's see what Seth does to make his way out of this here. He's got an active Mutavault.
So Seth now has to deal with Xenagos, but he's in a position where Rakdos' Return is going to just take a giant chunk out of his hand.
Right.
Even if it doesn't completely empty it, it still forces him to choose between Revelations and lands. And you kind of need all your lands if you want to cast a Revelation for any amount.
That's right. Now, Seth does play a land. He plays a second Mutavault. Does Seth run Syncopate?
Seth, in fact, does have 2 Syncopates. So it is something he can represent, and Rune might not want to play a giant Rakdos' Return into that. But if Seth does tap out, I imagine Rakdos' Return hits. It's getting to the point where Rakdos' Return is threatening to do way too much.
Okay. So we're back on Rune Andersen's turn here. He's got Xenagos there, which is active.
Yeah.
He has not played a land yet this turn, and we know one card in his hand, or excuse me, we know all the cards in his hand, but Seth knows one card in his hand, which is Rakdos' Return.
Yeah, I don't think you can just run out the Rakdos Return. He could actually do it for 3 here because you can plus Xenagos and add a mana.
Okay.
I kind of like just playing the Courser and really hoping you hit a land here.
Yeah, that would be sweet if he hits a land.
And also, I mean, playing Courser might elicit a response from Seth, and you're happy enough if he answers the Courser too.
Okay.
I don't like playing Pelucranos as much because hitting a land with Courser is so valuable, whereas if you play Pelucranos and then just get Supreme Verdicted, it doesn't end up being all that great for you.
Right. Rune agrees, and he's going to throw out Courser of Kruphix onto the stack here, and Seth now has to decide how he wants to react. Remember, Seth still does have 4 cards in his hand, though, as we can see, it's Sphinx's Revelation, Elspeth, Jace, and Azorius Charm. Normally, you'd be pretty excited to have this hand, but since he has no way to interact with the potentially forthcoming Rakdos' Return, he's got to be nervous here.
Yeah, and one of the reasons Rakdos Return is so good right now is that it wipes out your Planeswalker as well as your hand. So even though normally the way to play around Rakdos Return is just to drop your hand and put something into play, if that thing that Seth puts into play is like an Elspeth and then it gets Rakdos Return for enough damage, it just doesn't do anything.
Right.
And Xenagos' plus ability now actually makes it so Rune can Rakdos' Return for 5 even if he doesn't draw a land.
Okay. So here's Sphinx's Revelation for 2 from Seth Manfield.
Yeah, that has to be the play.
Right. He just needs to find a way. He does actually find a way to interact with the Rakdos' Return in the form of Syncopate. And interestingly, he doesn't have a land. Yeah. So he would have had a pretty nice play set up here if it weren't for the 2 Mutavaults where he can Supreme Verdict and still leave up Syncopate for 1, but he doesn't have the right colors to make that happen.
Yeah, at this point, he knows if he casts Supreme Verdict and passes, he's going to lose all 5 cards.
Right.
Well, I guess actually that's not necessarily true. He's only going to lose 2. So actually, casting Supreme Verdict here is good because it wipes out. It could wipe out Xenagos' mana capability. On the other hand, if he just casts Azorius Charm, he can still leave Syncopate up. He does hit the land drop that he was looking for. That is why you main phase the Charm.
So he's basically relegated to taking a big hit here. He's going to take potentially 8 damage this turn, but he is somewhat well protected.
If Rune flips a land here, which he didn't, he flipped looks like a Sylvan Caryatid, then he would be able to play around Syncopate and still cast a reasonably large Rakdos Return.
Now, can he just do that using Xenagos'?
Well, he can plus Xenagos, and he can Rakdos Return for 3 and still play around Syncopate.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's what he wants. I mean, that kind of uses up his whole card. It uses up his, the last really good card in his hand. Polukranos is fine, but it generally will not win the game against Esper.
Right.
So I think what his hope is that eventually Seth taps out and Rune is able to land a return for the whole hand.
Wow, this is close.
It is, because if Rune doesn't do anything here, I mean, he can't progress his board that much. He's still got to be worried about Supreme Verdict. He can still just attack with his Courser and 3 Xenagos tokens if he wants. One reason
interesting. He's going into combat here. He has not made a Satyr token yet this turn.
There's 2 reasons to do that. One is that he intends on plussing Xenagos later. The other is that he wants to leave 1 Satyr token back to block potential 2 Mutavaults coming across.
To kill Xenagos here. All right. So Courser Crewfix is lined up here for an attack, and he's actually considering whether he wants to attack with the Satyrs or not.
At least 1 certainly has to go in. If you're planning on plussing, I could see leaving 1 back. But if you're planning on using the 0 ability, I guess this indicates to me that Rune is more interested in leaving Courser back and then plussing Xenagos post-combat. Because if you were going to 0 Xenagos, I think I would have rather attacked with the Courser as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what he does here. I mean, I don't think casting Polukranos is really where he wants to be either, since he's got to be worried about Wrath at that point, since Supreme Verdict just wipes out his entire board. But if he pluses, it looks like he's just going to minus it or 0 it and put another Satyr into play.
So do you play Polukranos here then, or do you just say, look, my board's good enough, I can make you burn a Supreme Verdict and then rebuild with Polukranos plus Xenagos tokens?
I don't like playing Polukranos there, and it looks like he chose not to. I think that was wise.
That's just overextending.
Yeah.
All right, Hollowed Fountain off the top here for Seth Manfield.
Seth's actually in really good shape now.
Yeah.
Because what Seth can do is he can play a Supreme Verdict, and he can play a land, and then he's got it Syncopate up. Rune is down to just a Xenagos. He can also, if he wants, and one thing that I actually think he could consider is casting Supreme Verdict, playing an untapped Hallowed and killing Xenagos with the 2 Mutavaults.
Oh, interesting.
I might have gone for that. The only problem with that is if Rune has like a Doomblade that's just rotting in his hand, you get kind of blown out.
Oh, yes.
But Rune can't cast a big Rakdos Return. You know his top card is still a Sylvan Caryatid, so you know he's not casting a Rakdos Return for more. I think I might have done that because Seth did have enough mana to actually activate both Mutavaults there. So I think given that you're attacking with 1, you almost certainly want to just attack with both.
So Xenagos drops down to 1.
Oh, no, he's 1 mana short. I'm completely incorrect. So yeah, that was good. I do like this line of play, but if you could get the second Mutavault in there, you would.
Okay.
So even though Seth knows about Rakdos Return, he can't be that scared of it. It's going to hit him for 2 at most. That'll let him keep, an Elspeth and a Jace or something along those lines.
Sure. Yeah, Rune Andersen still only on 4 mana here. Meanwhile, Seth Manfield has 7 lands.
Rune missed a bunch of land drops.
Yeah.
Even with a Courser out, he had the opportunity to hit lands and just kept missing, which is pretty tough. Now you just kind of have to play Pelucranos and just get back on the board. You still have the Rakdos return. It's still a threat, but Seth's in much better shape. Basically, Seth's getting to hit land drops, and he isn't dead. And that's all Esper really needs to do.
Right. Seth drops down to 10 life here from the Satyr token, and the turn gets passed back to Seth, who draws a Thoughtseize. Interesting, he does have the black mana available here as well, so if he wants to rid himself of that pesky Rakdos' return or anything else that Rune has in hand, he can do that now, dropping down to 8.
This is actually pretty close, since
he can do that and Elspeth as well.
It is nice to Thoughtseize. The problem is if you Elspeth, you know that Rune has Mizium Mortars in hand, and Rune could plus Xenagos, Mizium Mortars away the 3 tokens, if you make 3 tokens, and hit in for 7. If you don't plus Elspeth, if you minus it, you're trading Elspeth for Pelucranos, basically.
Right.
So
this is a tough turn here for Seth.
He could potentially, this might be too greedy, it probably is, but he could Thoughtseize away the Mizium Mortars.
Okay.
Leave the Rakdos return, play Elspeth, plus Elspeth, put 3 tokens into play. Hope Rune doesn't draw a land. But that seems it's like it's a bit much.
It's a stretch, yeah.
I don't know if I can advocate doing that.
But I appreciate that you're bringing us all the angles here.
Yeah, I mean, I think given that Pelucranos is actually a pretty solid threat here, I think Thoughtseize in the Rakdos return. It's kind of distasteful, but you might just go Elspeth, kill Pelucranos, and then just pass the turn with an Elspeth on 1.
An Elspeth on 1 with 2 Jace Architect of Thoughts in hand that you can start to just grinding out card advantage.
The problem is, given that Xenagos has been huge this game, Rune has kind of stumbled on mana and not ended up having a great draw, but if not for Xenagos, then he would be in much bigger trouble. Because of the +1, he's able to threaten these giant spells with only 4 lands in play.
Right, and so Elspeth does trade loyalty counters for Pelucranos, but that means that one of these Satyr tokens is going to be able to finish off the loyalty of Elspeth herself.
Yeah, Seth's actually in okay shape now. I thought he was a little better earlier, but this actually looks fine because the Satyr token kills Elspeth. Rune leaves back 2 blockers from Mutavaults. He hit the land, far too late. He's got a Mizium Mortar in hand, so basically nothing in hand.
Yeah, this isn't bad at all.
Whereas Seth can play a Jace +1 it, leave Mutavault back, keep all the Satyrs back, and then play a Scryland, which you might as well just play the Scryland first, but either way. So I like just plussing Jace, and then next turn you can probably minus Jace once you have all your mana untapped. So Seth now playing the Scryland. I mean, you're going to play the Jace anyway, so you actually didn't really lose anything by playing Jace first. You just want to use Scryland before you activate Jace.
Right. So here's Jace +1, just like you mentioned, and he can just pass the turn back. He also has Syncopate in case anything super scary comes off the top of the deck.
And let's take a look, see if he kept here. And it looks like...
If he what?
So it looks like Seth put the card on bottom with his Scryland.
Ah, okay.
I was just curious if he had kept it. And he did not. Which is, the only good news Rune has gotten in a while here. It's kind of brutal that he lost his Courser, then drew 2 land in a row.
Right. All right, here's another Satyr that joins the party.
But still not really making any headway against Jace there.
And an island off the top for Seth Manfield. So now we're kind of in countdown mode here. Yeah. Jace is going to start ticking down. We're going to see a lot of cards go into Seth Manfield's hand, and once he hits the Sphinx's Revelation, he gets to just kind of blow away this game. Yeah.
So Jace splitting here. You can make it disappear, but the Elspeth's still going into Seth Manfield's hand. I mean, you got to split Elspeth versus everything, and I'm pretty sure you've got to just take Elspeth here. The Mizium Mortars is pretty annoying still, so it's actually worth considering taking Dissolve since you're not losing this game given the way it's going. I mean, I think I would take Elspeth still, but it is worth considering. So if Seth plays Elspeth, he could have 1 Mutavault up as a blocker. You plus Elspeth, but then you get Mortars. So you actually, to some degree, you might not want to play Elspeth at all. Let's see what happens if you do that. You can play the second Jace, keep the new Jace plus the new Jace. That seems.
This is interesting.
Yeah, Seth's got a couple decent-ish options, but nothing he's super happy about. The Mizium Mortars is causing a lot more problems than you'd think it would in this matchup.
Right.
Do you think Rune's going to side in more mortars because of how good it was
doubt
this
it.
game?
I doubt that. But he did seem to find a nice spot where he's getting some good value off of it. Although the fact that Seth knows about it is certainly making it worse. It's making Seth's life more difficult, but also giving him the information he needs to play around it.
Yeah, Corsair was a huge net negative this game.
Yes, it was. It just revealed.
If it had not revealed Rakdos Return and the Mizzy Mortars, Seth would have played this game probably fairly differently.
Right.
And probably gotten blown up by, at the very least, Mizzy Mortars.
Right.
Since Rakdos Return is a card you kind of worry about no matter what, but Mizzy Mortars is not a card you play too far around. And it would have been good this game. It would have made his Elspeth lines probably lethal. Mm-hmm. Instead, Corsair did all this revealing and then never actually hit a land.
That's right. All right, but it looks like Seth Manfield does decide to go for Elspeth.
And he can actually lose his Elspeth here. So what Rune can do is Mortars away Seth's board, attack Elspeth with all 3 tokens, plus a new token, so 4 tokens total. Mutavault can block 1. Seth still loses Elspeth, but you trade Elspeth for Mizzy Mortars at the very least.
But so how does this work, though? Doesn't Xenagos have to plus to play around?
Well, he's got a Sylvan Caryatid.
Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got a carry added.
But if
he needs 2 more mana to be able to overload mortars.
So Rune does need to actually play a land in order to not get syncopated.
Right.
Rune doesn't know about syncopate, though.
He doesn't know about it, though he does seem to be pretty conscious of it based on his play from earlier.
So right now, Rune, let's say the problem is the Mutavault on tap means he really needs to 0 Xenagos in order to kill Elspeth. Mm-hmm. So given that he doesn't actually have the land, Elspeth will survive this turn one way or the other. Pelukros is not a great play into Elspeth either. So I think what Rune is going to do is cast the mortars and just get syncopated.
You know, it's interesting if you're sitting in Rune's seat and you see blue colorless up.
Yeah,
your brain kind of goes to dissolve. Yeah. And that's one that he doesn't really have the luxury of playing around.
Yeah, I don't think you can play around Dissolve regardless, and you probably can't play around Syncopate either, because at this point,
I mean, he technically can, right? Like he can plus.
Yeah, but then you don't kill Elspeth into Mutavault.
Right, so you don't actually get anywhere.
You lose to what's on the board, and I don't think you can lose to what's on the board. I think you have to instead of what could be in the hand. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a good situation, but you still have to go for it.
Yeah, it looks like Rune's really tanked out here, and this is a key point in this early game. In this game 1 between Seth Manfield and Rune. Jund monsters versus Esper control, and for once the Esper guy's the one waiting.
Yeah, the Seth plays very quickly. I've played against Seth a lot in a lot of matches, and he generally does not have a lot of time wasted. So
you see that pretty often with Magic Online players that play a lot. They tend to play relatively quickly, comparatively, but
yeah,
not always.
Magic Online generally gives you a pretty big incentive to play your matches quickly. Not only do you have the actual clock ticking down, if you play your matches quickly, you get to play more matches.
Yeah,
you can join more events. You know?
7 in the queue.
So there is always the reason to do that. So.
All right, he is plussing Xenagos here. That's going to net him 1, 2, 3, 4 mana.
So Mortars is going to get kicked, and then Rune is not going to. Yeah, I mean, this does play around the Syncopate, but I don't know that you can afford to do this because at this point, you're not being able to finish off Elspeth. Means that next turn Seth's just going to plus Elspeth, and then you're just in terrible shape again.
Yeah. Also, Mutavault's still sitting down there. Yeah, this is...
I mean, you do have a Pelukronos. Technically, Pelukronos can wipe the 3 tokens as well, but counting on Pelukronos when Jace is going to get to minus seems a bit thin.
I mean, is that just where Rune's at here? Like, is he in a position where things are a bit thin for him and he just has to accept that? Or are there different lines that he could take to... more conservative lines here.
Well, this is about as conservative as it gets, which I think is fine. I mean, he's playing around Syncopate. I would have probably taken a riskier line. I would have actually lost worse, but that doesn't. I don't think that makes the line wrong.
Of course, it doesn't. Right.
I think that there are definitely games you can win by playing worse, but that doesn't mean you should be playing worse.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Rune is playing worse. This is very much a judgment call. Mm-hmm. My tendency is when I'm losing to play riskier, and I think that's what Rune should be doing here.
Okay.
Granted, this is going to work out better for him, so I can't really fault him for it, but it is something that I think you have to decide whether you want to play around cards in hand or in play. And Rune is choosing to play around cards in hand, which Seth actually has.
Right.
So that's better for him. My tendency is to just play around what's in play instead of what's in hand when I'm losing.
All right. I'm assuming that all these are hitting. Wow, they're actually just all attacking Seth.
Just putting Seth down to 2.
Yeah.
Or 4 if Seth wants to trade off a Mutavault here. given that you can't kill Elspeth, I suppose that's what you can do that. And then at that point, you're just hoping to draw...
Stormbreath Dragon?
Stormbreath Dragon is the most likely out, yes.
Does he have any more Rakdos' return in the main?
He does not. So
he just has the
Stormbreath Dragon is the card that can do the most damage. He's also got 3 Gore Clan Rampagers.
Okay.
If he draws one of those, there are a lot of situations where he ends up forcing through lethal.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Now Seth has to decide whether he wants to trade a Mutavault for a Centaur or a Satyr and gain 2 life. So I think that I probably would trade just to minimize the amount of things I lose to, but it doesn't actually matter too much. If you're still at 4, then Stormbreath is still lethal, so you still have to consider that.
Right.
But I like being at 4 better than 2, because if you're at 4, you can +1 Jace and you don't die to Stormbreath immediately.
Right.
Which is a pretty big difference.
That's
actually
huge. Yeah, it also keeps the Satyrs at bay. I mean, if he trades a Mutavault now, he can use all the rest of his mana up next turn and still be able to block all 3 Satyrs with 3 Elspeth tokens if that's what it comes to here.
Looks like Seth's just going to take the giant hit and go to 2.
Maybe this is why. Maybe he wanted to be able to syncopate here.
That is a reason to do it. I mean,
yeah.
Rune only has 1 card left in hand. Seth's going to be glad to trade away the syncopate. Rune has so much mana in play.
I mean, even though Polukranos... Actually, Polukranos is really bad, right? So, yeah, this is actually just great for Seth. Though, remember, he is sitting on just Jace here, so he's going to get to see quite a few cards this turn, but...
I mean, Seth's a revelation away, as this deck always is once it hits 9 or 10 mana.
Of course, he draws the awkward Thoughtseize here. Where
well, that's not the best card to draw.
Perhaps not.
Or it's the worst card.
His opponent's on 0, he's on 2 life, and he draws Thoughtseize.
Seth, I mean, Rune's got no cards in hand. If Seth minuses Jace and pluses Elspeth, he's still not losing to anything that's in play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of Seth's plays start with minusing Jace. You probably even play the second Jace if you don't hit anything off the first Jace.
Because you can do the old minus Jace and then play a second Jace and plus it if you want, or you can even minus again if you still have mana for a key spell. Seth's still tanking it out, though. He wants to make sure that... Look, I mean, these last couple of turns have been clearly the most important ones of this early game. And it is going to be revealed cards here.
So this is interesting. I think you split the 2 dissolves in the detention sphere. I don't think that's particularly difficult.
Okay.
Which one you take is actually a little difficult. If you think you're okay and doing okay in play, then you can just take the dissolves.
Yes.
I actually kind of like taking dissolves.
It just means Rune doesn't get to do anything forever.
Right. You take the dissolves, you hit Xenagos with your 2 Mutavaults, then you plus Elspeth. Now you have 3 Elspeth tokens to chump the 3 Satyr tokens.
Wow.
No Xenagos in play, and double dissolve in hand, which is almost the lock. What Rune needs to then draw is Gore Clan Rampage.
Yes, he does.
Gore Clan Rampage is an uncounterable way to win the game.
This is insane, actually.
Yeah, this is a pretty awesome game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like taking the dissolves because you lose to way less. You don't lose to Stormbreath. You don't lose to any big top deck spell. You lose to Gore Clan Rampager, which Detention Sphere does play around, but playing around just Gore Clan Rampager, you don't even know if they play it for sure. Instead of playing around like Stormbreath Dragon, which they absolutely are playing, doesn't make much sense. And they're going to be playing more Stormbreaths.
Wow! It's Gore Clan Rampager off the top here for Rune Andersen.
Seth's going to come to a gory end here.
No kidding. Especially because all these Satyrs are going to be attacking Seth.
Yeah, this was, I think, awesome play on both sides. And
wow!
And Rune got exactly rewarded by drawing the exact card he wanted. I'll admit, if I was in Rune's seat, I would not have won this game. I mean, I would have played differently. So it is very cool seeing him get rewarded for the line he took.
Oh, man. I mean, he still got to hold his breath here because cards like Azorius Charm could come into play.
Yeah, but there's no way he can't, like...
No, I'm just saying, when he puts it on the stack, he's like,
Seth's got to be feeling, pretty disgusted.
A little robbed at this point.
When you have double dissolve and your opponent has no cards in hand and they draw an uncounterable deal 4.
Right.
Actually, a deal 5 even.
And Rune takes it. Wow. That was a close one. Pretty stone-faced there from Rune. I mean, that was a huge draw step. And he's just like, yeah.
I mean, that was the draw step.
That was insane.
So, Seth's not too comfortable, especially since game 1 is the easiest game for the Esper deck. I mean, post-board games do get tougher.
Take a look at our feature match area here.
Whereas, so it looks like Rune gets to board in. He has a lot of cards too, just like we saw Bruno board in last round. He's got Mistcutter Hydras, Abrupt Decay, Shanjo Pyromaster, Golgari Charm, 2 more Rakdos' returns, another Xenagos, and potentially even Unravel the Aether to kill Detention Sphere. So So Rune is boarding in like 10 or 11 cards, if not more.
Okay.
Whereas Seth does get Fated Retribution. He gets one of them only, but Fated Retribution is the best card.
All right, Randy, you got some updates for us there?
Yeah, I've got a number of updates, but I got to show you a sweet match. We've got a Maze's End deck in this field. And the Maze's End, you got to watch this game. I'm just going to start playing. It's Gabriel Rosagner versus Ferrand Lee. So it's not super relevant to top 4, but Nate Price told me to check this out. I couldn't stop myself. I've watched it. I can already verify. Yeah, this gets kind of sweet. Detention Sphere takes out Xenagos. So Gabrielle on the bottom of the screen is playing a Maze's End deck. Here's the Maze's End. You can't really get a good look to reading it, but every turn he can go search for a Guild Gate, and if he gets all 10 Guild Gates into play, he wins the game. But look at the army that his opponent is putting into play.
Jeez.
He's assembling the legions. He's got a Satyr. He's got a Voice of Resurgence. He's got a Mutavault. All of those come crunching over, but now here's the key thing that the Maze's End deck is capable of doing. It's just full of fog effects, riot control, all the fog effects that are legal and standard right now. And if every time you buy a turn, you get to Maze's End out for another land. And now look at the army; it keeps growing. Note this elemental token is up to 1111 already.
Oh my goodness!
Crunch 30, 40 power into the red zone. Oh, but there's Defend the Hearth. Maze's End keeps chipping away. Assemble more legions. 2 spirit tokens are up to 15-15. But this time it's riot control, so his life total goes from 19 to 35. No problem.
Gain 16.
Now there's an Elspeth on the other side. Now the 1919. But Supreme Verdict, perhaps you've seen that card before, resets everything. Now he can actually afford to take a hit because of the 35 life he's on from the riot control. And then Maze's End does what it does. 10 Guild Gates.
Wow.
Maze's End in action.
All right, we're ready.
Pretty cool match.
Thank you, Randy. That was pretty insane. We're back on our main match here, Rune Andersen versus Seth Manfield. Early stages here, Elvish Mystic for Rune on his first turn. Seth Manfield has land, and is thinking? No, he's passed the turn back, so Rune is the one who's thinking.
Yeah, Rune's got a number of options here. He can play the Courser. He's just going to attack with the Elvish Mystic.
Wow, is he going to get Azorius Charmed here?
Yeah, looks like.
Ooh, that's risky biz there.
Yeah, that was a kind of aggressive attack there. Well, he can scry it to the bottom. He actually doesn't really want the Elvish Mystic.
So maybe he had it all planned out.
So, yeah, go take a look at the chat. I want to see if it's scryed to the bottom.
I have to know.
Yep, he put it on the bottom.
He did. So he had it planned.
Yeah, that is great.
I love that.
And Seth with a pretty classic blue-white hand here. He had the turn to Azorius Charm. He now has Syncopate for the turn 3 play into a Jace potentially next turn. I think it's kind of hard to resist syncopating a Courser here. Seth does have a Supreme Verdict in hand, but given that you really want to tap out for Jace and Syncopate loses value so quickly,
it does.
I like just casting the Syncopate there.
Yeah, you hit that window. I mean, Syncopate versus Rakdos' return is quite nice. Does he have more of them out of the board? Does Rune bring in multiple?
Yeah, he goes up to 3 Rakdos return.
Wow.
So, and Xenagos is such a beating in this matchup. If not for Xenagos, you could often minus Jace there. Though Mutavault does make that a little trickier. You've got a plus Jace here. Otherwise, Xenagos just eats Jace for free.
Yeah, either that or Mutavault.
And so now Rune is looking at a pretty solid hand. He's got all the mana he needs. He's going to play Xenagos, make a token, hit Jace down to 4. Then next turn he can play Stormbreath Dragon and potentially smash Jace as well, depending on what Seth does.
Xenagos, another one of those pesky planeswalkers that gets the control decks that just give you an instant board state and keep adding to it. They really do demand some type of answer at some point. Domri Raid also fills that role for this red-green based Jund deck.
Yeah, and I think that once you've given the blue-white mages Supreme Verdict, Sphinx's Revelation, and Detention Sphere, you can't really just give them everything else. You have to give out the other decks tools to fight against them. So
agreed.
We're minusing Jace here. Often you put Aetherling by itself, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case right now, since Dissolve and Ultimate Prize go pretty well together. Putting a 3-drop and a 2-drop removal spell, when Seth's about to play his 5th land for the turn, does seem like it could be risky.
That is true. Although if you put Aetherling in any one of these cards in the same pile, that becomes a pretty nice
Yeah, I
pile
mean,
as well.
Jace is tough to split. I think Ultimate Price is the card that Rune is kind of afraid of because of his Stormbreath Dragon. Though if Seth just keeps mana up for Dissolve, Rune can just Xenagos him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rune doesn't worry too much about pretty much any of these cards, actually. He's got decent counterplay to all of them.
So he does split Aetherling Ultimate Price. Interesting.
And what Rune doesn't know, but he can maybe guess, Seth doesn't have any black mana yet. He doesn't have any represented on the board. And he actually does have a Watery Grave hiding in his hand, though.
Okay, he takes the 2-card pile.
Yeah, I think you're going to take the 2-card pile there most of the time, almost regardless of what the 2 cards are.
He's going to play Watery Grave tapped and chip the turn back. This, fortunately, of course, he has 4 untapped mana here, which makes it pretty sketchy for Rune Andersen to just run Stormbreath Dragon in there, especially knowing that it's going to get killed.
Yeah, I don't think you run it into an Ultimate Price.
Yeah.
I think you just make another Xenagos token and just try to kill Jace just with both tokens, just in case Seth has Azorius Charm or Last Breath.
Okay. Golgari Charm is the other card.
Rune doesn't really have much else in hand, though. He is a little flooded. I could see playing the dragon because of that, but it still doesn't seem great to just run it out here.
So it looks like Mutavault and another Satyr are going to try to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, you can pressure Seth with a bunch of 2/2 hasters. You don't really need to do anything here. So I like sending 2 at Jace just to be sure.
He did. He sent 2 at Jace, and then this one Satyr is attacking Seth.
Yeah, and if you're the one lone attacker, you do want it to be a Satyr, not a Mutavault, because Seth already has incentive to kill the Mutavault over to Satyr, so you'd rather him take 2 if he does that. So Seth kind of in a bad spot here. I mean, he's just going to run out the Aetherling and just assume that Rune does not have very much removal for it. It's actually pretty good.
He doesn't have that much, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much that actually does kill Aetherling.
No. Mizzium Mortars on its own doesn't even do it.
It's funny that Rune would actually be in a lot better shape if he had split Aetherling by itself. Seth couldn't have afforded to take it, and as it turns out, Aetherling's actually just running it out on turn 6. You don't usually see that, but
no.
I think that's the right play here.
Now, one interesting thing is can Seth afford to block with Aetherling here? No, right?
Well, the only thing is if you block, what exactly is your Aetherling dying to? A Gorklan Rampager or Mizzium Mortars?
Or Mizzium Mortars.
Those are both cards I would kind of expect to have been taken out.
Especially the Mortars.
Well, the Mortars for sure is going out.
Yeah.
And Gorklan Rampager, honestly, if you're like most of the Jund Monsters decks and want to board in over 8 cards, Gorklan Rampager is one of the cards that gets the cut often.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it goes out. It looks like Rune is just going to potentially just run out the dragon to deal 4 here, since he knows that
it's going to pay the ultimate price at some point.
Yeah, but he does have the Golgari Charm. The Golgari Charm actually will save it from ultimate price.
Okay,
so
interesting.
We'll see if Seth, and it's actually really funny. So Seth's incentive is to cast ultimate price on his turn, so that dragon can't go ultimate.
Right.
Which plays right into Golgari Charm and lets Rune Golgari Charm and then untap and attack with it.
Yes. Now Seth also though has Supreme Verdict to go along with ultimate price though. He needs to make sure that he doesn't kill his own Aetherling in that process as well.
So actually never mind, Seth's not even casting the ultimate price. What Seth's doing is killing Xenagos, flickering out Aetherling, casting Supreme Verdict, and getting blown out by Golgari Charm.
Right. That's exactly what's happening.
That's all his plan up to the Golgari Charm part. That part's Rune's plan.
Right.
So, and Seth, even if he might suspect Golgari Charm, but I think you've got to just go for it here. This is just way too appealing. So yeah, this is going to be pretty gross.
All right, so here's Supreme Verdict. And Rune is going to just get him here. Now, this does not put Seth Manfield dead, though.
No, Seth isn't dead exactly, but, well, actually, he might be. Hold on, he's
taking 11?
Well, Stormbreath Dragon is gonna hit him for 11. So if
he's going to ultimate.
If Rune draws a land, then Seth, I think, is actually dead.
Because then he can use all of his mana.
And then attack with all 3. You block a Satyr and you take 11.
Wow.
And so Rune actually even has the land in hand. So all he has to do is land, ultimate attack.
Wow.
Oh, it looks like he's one short. Seth actually played
1, 2,
a land.
3, 4,
so
5, 6.
Seth did play the land there. So Rune is one point short, but this is still obviously a giant beating. Yeah, Seth had 4 cards in hand, but then he actually played a land. So the dragon does 10.
Okay.
You block a Satyr, you go to 1. So do you hit Seth down to 1? You probably do here. Rune is on 18. He's not dying anytime soon.
And he also has a Mutavault.
What Rune is,
so even if Seth is able to sweep the board or whatever.
yeah, Rune does know about the ultimate price, though, so he knows the Storm Breath's going away.
Right.
But
Good
then
point.
next turn, he can swarm Aetherling with Satyr, Elf, Mutavault. Seth also has his own Mutavault, so it's actually pretty close still.
It's getting thinner there, but yeah.
Close in the sense that Seth's going to be at 1 and facing not a bunch of creatures,
right?
So, but not completely over. So Rune has to decide whether he wants to take 2 and go to 16, though, to play Overgrown Tomb untapped. Part of the problem there is that actually makes Aetherling a 2-turn clock, though Seth's not going to be able to afford to attack with Aetherling and spend a bunch of mana on it anytime soon here. Well, at least not too soon. If he draws Supreme Verdict, it might be soon. So yeah, I like the just full-on attack. Take Seth to 1. You end up with 3 attackers versus Seth's 2 blockers next turn, and Seth is locked into spending 2 of that mana on ultimate price. So you end up pretty close. Seth's going to need, and 1 of the mana on Mutavault. So Seth's going to need a card that costs 4 or less and is not black that can deal with an attacker.
Did you have one in mind?
I did. That was the best one.
Wow. Supreme Verdict right off the top there for Seth Manfield.
And at this point, I mean, you can just bash for like 5 with Aetherling, blink Aetherling. You can actually bash for 6 with Aetherling, blink Aetherling, and then play a tapped Tattle Fountain.
And then Aetherling blocks Mutavault and you don't die.
Yeah, though actually what I'd probably do is just hit for 4 and then leave ultimate price up.
Just in case.
Like, Rune draws a Storm Breath Dragon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Seth, I think, is playing it the conservative way, which is correct here. Since that doesn't actually change the clock either. 6 versus 4 is the same here.
Right. All right, blink.
So blink, and then...
And now he has ultimate price or Mutavault activation available and an Aetherling on the table. Passes the turn back. What does Rune find?
He found a Stomping Ground to go with his Pelucranos, which... Well, the Pelucranos is actually relevant here, too. Rune can attack with both. Seth activates Mutavault, and then Rune goes and monsters his Pelucranos to kill the Mutavault.
Oh, sure.
Of course, Seth's still, is still sitting on a Sphinx Revelation and an ultimate price.
Yeah,
so,
so here's ultimate price that's going to hit Pelucranos, and then Sphinx's Revelation is going to put Seth Manfield in a much more manageable life total on his turn.
Yeah, so
he gets to go for 5
Seth
here.
is looking like he's in pretty good shape here. He has to decide what he wants to lose to or what he wants to try to play around. Since he could attack Rune for 6 here, or even just for 4. You attack Rune for 4, you put Rune to 8. Aetherling's now lethal next turn.
Right.
Rune has 1 draw step. If he draws...
Rune's on 0 cards.
Yes, 0 cards. If he draws Rakdos Return, you die.
Yeah.
Because you can Revelation... At that point, you have to Revelation for 2 and hope to draw Dissolve.
Okay.
Because Seth can go up to 6, but Rune has 8 mana in play. If Rune draws Storm Breath Dragon, you don't leave Aetherling back, you die to Storm Breath plus Mutavault. Because you can Revelation up to 6, but then you take 6.
I see.
If Rune draws Gold Clan Rampager, doesn't do anything. Xenaghost doesn't do anything. So actually, the thing is, it might be better just to leave Aetherling and pass, because you don't kill Rune next turn, but you do end up drawing 5 cards plus your draw step, and that's usually going to be enough. So Seth I think just passes the turn, decides not to go for it. It looks like Rune didn't draw anything that would have immediately been relevant here. So yeah, he drew a Sylvan Caryatid, and then Seth's going to get to go ahead and scoop 5 cards, which generally, will get him out of the danger zone here. Yeah. So now,
Scryland as well here.
Yeah. So now Seth, now that he hit the Syncopate and has a million mana, he can just attack with Aetherling, just deal some amount of damage here. Probably don't need to tap out completely or anything, and then have Syncopate plus Aetherling up, ready to go for next turn. So Rune is going to need a pretty good draw step here. So looks like Rune drew the card he needed like 1 turn too late here, since he's paying 6 here, but it's Mistcutter Hydra.
Is it Mistcutter Hydra?
Which is nice, but Mutavault can just chump it here at this point. So it is a little late. Mistcutter wouldn't have done it last turn either, because there was a Mutavault there still, but it would have limited how much Seth could Revelate for. So Mistcutter will not quite do it. As long as Seth doesn't die to chumps the Mistcutter and goes for the kill with Aetherling, which he will, especially since he has a Syncopate in hand. Looks like we are going to be heading to game 3 here.
Interesting. Kind of flip-flop from what we might expect as well. Rune stole game 1. Has a great sideboard plan.
And then,
but loses game 2 potentially here.
Well, the top deck was on the other foot there. I mean, Seth drew that second Supreme Verdict right when he needed it.
He sure did.
Looks like Seth's just casting a Revelation, just running up the score here.
There it is, goes up to 10, drops back down to 3, and has his opponent completely tapped out with a lethal attacker.
And Rune making Seth go through the motions, even though Seth's actually ahead on the clock there. But I suppose Rune is F6, so it doesn't really inconvenience him.
And still running up the score a little.
Yeah, pumping Edeling to 8 there.
Get him to -1. And we've got a red zone update here with Randy.
Yeah, I've been tracking the other matches at the top of the Swiss. While these guys get ready for Game 3, I'm going to run real quick through the deciding game between Corey Lack and Hannes Karem. So Corey's got blue-white Devotion with a splash of white. Hannes has got a mono-black Devotion. It's Game 3. They've split the first 2, obviously, and this is right on the edge of contention. Corey is trying to hang out in that tie for 2nd through 5th. We see Thoughtseize hits a Domestication. Pack Rat comes out for Hannes. But the Blue Devotion deck's going aggro. Pack Rat's going to trade for Tidebinder Mage here. And now Ifara comes down. This is really one of the key cards that make this Blue Devotion deck tick. Every creature that Corey plays now, he gets an extra card. And if he gets... There's Detention Sphere taking out Night Veil Spectre. Ifara turns into a creature and smack, 6/5, indestructible, headed into the red zone. Grey Merchant out from Hannes, trying to keep up. But Pack Rat's got to chump Ifara, and now here comes Thassa. So Thassa and Ifara are friends here. Both gods are active. Both gods are going over. Thassa is making her best friend Ifara unblockable, and that's the game.
Jeez.
Corey Lack gets the 8th win, so he will be in position to advance to top 4 with 2 rounds to go.
Thanks, Randy. Players are just finishing up their sideboards. Once they're done, we're going to be back down there, and it looks like they're ready now.
Bam.
So Seth Manfield versus Rune Andersen here. This is Game 3. In the early stages of the standard portion of our tournament here. Elvish Mystic, a nice turn 1 play from Rune Andersen. Temple of Silence for Seth Manfield. Passes the turn back. And how does Rune's hand look, Luis? I see he's got Pelucranos, Vraska, and he's going to get to cast one or the other next turn.
It's decent, but part of the problem here is that when you have a hand with this many accelerants, you could become so much more vulnerable to Supreme Verdict, especially when your opponent ends up thought seizing in this case or countering your one non-creature threat.
Right, which is exactly what Seth does.
And Pelucranos is really your worst threat. I mean, it's fine. It still attacks for a lot of damage, but Rune cannot be happy about having a Pelucranos plus 2 mana elves essentially in play. And 1 Supreme Verdict later, and all of a sudden he's just got all lands.
He's just got nothing.
But
right, there it is, Pelucranos, and the elf's going to get in there for 1, pass the turn back to Seth. And Seth has a nice long game set up here with Sphinx's Revelation ×2, a couple of lands, Detention Sphere. And he's actually just going to use the Detention Sphere on Pelucranos. Is this a nod to the dragon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you don't want to just put yourself dead to Stormbreath Dragon here. And it looks like Rune has another threat, and Domri's a good one.
All right, that's a good one. That can not only start refilling his hand with creatures potentially, but also its ultimate is threatening to Seth. So nice draw there from Rune. Doesn't reveal anything.
He doesn't reveal anything, and Seth has another Detention Sphere, and he knows the top card is not a creature. But unfortunately for Seth, Rune's hand is a second Domri.
Running Domri raids for
Do you think that Seth should have waited to try to hit both Domris with the same sphere?
Wait, what are we going to see a big Rakdos' return here?
Yeah, it looks like Seth's actually about to be on 0 cards and just 4 land in play.
Wow. So now all of a sudden those mana creatures look a lot better as they were able to power out a Rakdos' return off the top for 4, and that leaves Seth Manfield on 0 cards in hand. That might not be for long, though. Jace might have something to say. Reveals Thoughtseize, Godless Shrine, Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Elspeth gets put into her own pile.
I wonder if, if Seth just takes Godless Shrine Thoughtseize, he can just strip down Domri, and then all of a sudden we have a fight of Jace versus Elvish Mystic, which is actually good for Seth. If he takes the Elspeth, he ends up not being able to do anything else. So actually, I think this split might have been a little risky.
Okay. And this is exactly what you just described. Domri raid in the bin, and now we've got
a top deck war here.
We do.
And it looks like Rune found something.
He did. He found Courser of Crewfix, revealing another Courser of Crewfix on the top of his library.
Well, that's par for the Courser here. Rune has not revealed a land yet.
That's true. Although at least this Courser is just another brick here. He's got Pelucranos.
And Seth's drawn an Aetherling. We're going to see another Aetherling cast on 6 mana here very soon. I mean, all Seth has to do is draw an untapped land. Jace is adept at protecting himself. Rune probably, I don't know, he could drop a second Courser. I think the fact that threatens Jace would make me want to drop it, even though you end up being vulnerable to Supreme Verdict.
I mean, he does have Seth Manfield top decking here. Aetherling is what Seth has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands on the battlefield. This is his 6th. It comes into play tap, though.
Which is a beating. I mean, having that Aetherling out a turn earlier would have been pretty crucial.
Absolutely. And Seth ships that card to the bottom with his Temple of Enlightenment, passes the turn back.
We finally hit a land.
Hey, a land.
Followed by another land. So Jace is still holding at 1 here. He just keeps getting knocked down to 1. Rune is, I think I'm just going to play the Pelucranos here. I don't think you can afford to just be doing nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does. Pelucranos hits the battlefield, and Rune has a pretty nice battlefield set up. Oh, Supreme Verdict off the top.
Right on
here.
time, just like last time.
Man. On command, whang, a ton of permanents.
And you know that Rune has a stomping ground now that he's just drawn. He's going to play the Courser, showing Seth that his last card is a stomping ground. He hits the ground off the top, so Seth has perfect information. Seth knows he's got to be incredibly favored to win right now.
Yes.
He even drew the land, so he can play Aetherling, have a mana up to protect it. He knows that Rune is drawing a Sylvan Caryatid next turn, has a stomping ground in hand. This is looking like it's going to be over very soon.
Yeah. Xenagos Reveler on top of the library for Rune. You'll notice that the clocks have turned that scary yellowish color. That means that they're getting a little lower, but they should have plenty of time to
I don't
finish
think
this
it's going to
match.
matter here. I mean, I think Aetherling is just going to finish the job. There's even a Jace sitting there. I mean, Seth probably doesn't even need to draw anything else, but he's going to see a bunch of new cards off Jace.
Yeah, here's a few right now. Detention Sphere, Supreme Verdict, Thoughtseize. Detention Sphere goes into its own pile.
Yeah, this junk deck has not fared well, or this Jund deck has not fared well against the top of its opponent's decks here.
Not at all. I mean, to be fair, Rune did have a fantastic top deck in the first game, but
that's true. That was an awesome one, the Gorkline Rampager, but
a couple of Supreme Verdicts, timely ones from
a very
Seth.
common saying of our team is applicable here because when he Rakdos returned Seth and Seth drew very well afterwards. Is discard doesn't have protection from BS. So, yeah. I mean, you can Thoughtseize them all you want. The top of their deck can still just be great.
That's right. All right, so it looks like Aetherling's going to get into the red zone, get blinked, and then potentially we're going to see Supreme Verdict here.
Yeah,
I
think
Rune's on 0 cards, drawing a Xenagos. Is a Supreme Verdict going to get better than this?
Yeah, I don't think that Supreme Verdict's super exciting here. So I can imagine Seth just not casting it.
He's just going to say go.
I mean, it does let Rune fade any land draw steps here, but it doesn't end up putting Seth in a position where he really cares about too much. It looks like Seth's just going to run it though.
Okay.
I mean, Seth has nothing else to do.
That was his whole turn.
Yeah, he knows that, and now
Here's a Caryatid.
Actually, the reason to do this is good is that this lets him protect Jace. Otherwise, Jace actually was going to die if the Courser wanted to throw itself away.
All right, so Xenagos Reveler.
I mean, Seth's at 8.
Makes a satyr.
Seth's not, at a point where he's 100% safe, but I think the Aetherling being lethal in 2 hits and Seth's drawn a Dissolve.
He drew a Dissolve,
means that there's no Miracle Gorkline Rampager happening here if Seth leaves his Aetherling back, and he's got even a potential Mutavault. Though Seth actually doesn't have enough blue to do everything.
So he can hit for 7 here.
Yeah, actually what Seth is just going to do is just hit for 8 and pass Jace's plus, so even a Gorkline Rampager isn't lethal. And Seth can dissolve any other card that gets drawn here.
Right, so Seth seems to have a lock here. Rune's going to make a satyr with Xenagos. theoretically take down Jace here.
Yeah, but Rune's dying to Aetherling next turn, and Seth's not gonna pass up the opportunity to kill his opponent when he has Dissolve in hand.
Right.
So.
And Seth is moving in here. Very close to a victory. He's attacking Rune Andersen. He's got a lethal Aetherling here. And this should do it. Remember, Seth still has Dissolve in his hand, so nothing can get in the way of this.
Yeah, Rune doesn't have anything, and Seth's just going to go for it because he has the Dissolve.
Because he has the Dissolve, and that's going to do it. Seth Manfield takes down the match. It was a tough one with a lot of top decks and a friendly handshake there. You're not used to shaking the hand when you play on Magic Online. You usually say GG.
I thought you were going to say just not shaking your opponent's hands.
No, I do that, yeah. All right, why don't we go over to Randy here in the red zone for some updates.
Yeah, we're getting down to crunch time here. So we talked about how Lars Dom was starting to run away for it, and everybody except his opponent was rooting for him to win. Well, Dmitry Budakov had to go play against the Lars Dom juggernaut, and Lars did everybody a favor. Dmitry picks up a loss. Lars has now officially mathematically clinched. We've got our first top 4 member. Lars has got 10 wins. Nobody else has more than 8. 2 games up with 2 to go. Pretty good shape. And even there's only 3 people back behind him. So Lars gets his win. The match I wanted to look at a little more, though, is the match between Thomas Glede and Anssi Alkio. So I've got that replay queued up. Thomas is playing kind of an interesting take on the Black Devotion deck. I haven't really seen much of this one, but his mono Black Devotion deck, he's splashing blue. He's splashing blue for Ashiok in the main deck and 4 copies of Notion Thief in the sideboard. Anssi, meanwhile, has the black-green Dredge deck that we saw in the feature match last round. At least it's supposed to be black-green. This swamp, not really the draw Anssi wanted. Desecration Demon is, I think going to just get the job done here. Oh, Shatterborn Demon takes down the Lifebane zombie. But Shadowborn Demon is going to just have to step in front of Desecration Demon. The second Desecration Demon comes down. Grizzly Salvage tries to get things started for Anssi Alkio. Lotleth Troll is going to run into Devour Flesh, and then those 2 demons are going to take giant chunks out of Ansi's life total. So that was game 1. And this match is 2 players who were in that tie for 2nd through 5th. So huge match. Anssi, having lost the last one, I'm sure starting to get a little nervous about his ability to make top 4. Here's the second game. And I'm kind of curious because we'll see, I think, if I remember correctly, the signature card for Thomas Glede is going to come out in that Ashiok. And what is your take on this, Luis? Have you seen this archetype with the Ashioks and the Notion Thieves?
So I haven't seen Ashiok specifically, but the new kind of thing is to just play this mono black devotion deck and splash any one of the colors. Now that we have a lot of the different Scry temples around, and now that people are kind of branching out looking for an edge against the popular decks, you're seeing people wanting to play cards like Ashiok, like Slaughter Games, like potentially Abrupt Declare or Golgari Charm. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot more splashed mono black decks in the future. And Ashiok seems like an interesting addition. I'm not sure which matchup it's best in because
that's kind of what I was wondering. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, well, we've tested this card a lot for Pro Tour Dublin, Pro Tour Theros, and our conclusion was it's a good card. It's a powerful card. There's no matchup where you're like, yes, Ashiok. Even against Control, it takes a long time to get going. So, I mean, I imagine Tomasz tested it and liked it, but there's no one matchup where Ashiok, I think, is the clinching card.
Got it. Yeah, the way this game played out, Anssi took some mulligans if you were looking super clear and super close. Took him a couple turns to get started. Bunch of removal spells from Tomasz, I think, is really how he got this game stalemated, where Ashiok can just start drilling away at Ansi's library. Gray Merchant, and now Desecration Demon's going to come down. Shadowborn eats the Gray Merchant, but...
Yeah, it looks like Ashiok went ultimate there, which actually kills Ansi's entire graveyard, which is not generally the mode you really care about when you go ultimate, but it's actually very good here.
That's brutal.
Did we find the matchup?
Yeah, we did.
We found the matchup.
It's perfect
all
against
about
the Dredge matchup.
The ultimate against the Dredge opponent who already had to mulligan and already got all their stuff killed. Crazy. That is not what I thought when I saw Ashiok with all of those cards.
That is a lot of cards under Ashiok.
Yeah, but the ultimate is the one that was relevant.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Luis. Yeah, and now I think Tomasz is just too far ahead. Tomasz Glede, it's got the demon. He's got the other demon. He's got the Lifebane.
So he advances to 8 wins now.
Yes. Tomasz Galid wins this match. He's on 8 wins. By my scribbling, I've got it at Lars Dom sitting on 30. And then Tomasz Galid and Corey Lack tied for 2nd and 3rd on 24. And then the 21-pointers, who are tied for sort of 4th and 5th and 6th, Dmitry Budakov, Ansi Alkio, and Seth Manfield, who won the feature match.
Seth's rallying quite nicely here.
Oh, yeah. He is now tied for a qualification spot.
Yeah. All right. So good stuff. Thanks, Randy, for the Red Zone updates there. We've got, I believe Nate Price is actually ready to go. He's got Bruno Diaz down there. He's the one that we caught on camera for a little while. Real emotional guy. You can hear him clapping. And
We've heard some claps here from the coverage room.
Yeah. So we're going to get an interview with Bruno right now.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Nate Price. I'm here at the Magic Online Community or Magic Online Championship with Bruno Diaz. How's it going, Bruno?
Just fine, thank you.
Beautiful. For those of you guys who may not be able to see this at home, there's a nice, lovely Brazilian flag right here, close to your heart, where you like to keep it. Yep. Bruno is a Brazilian Magic player. You are the lone Latin American representative in the crowd today, aren't you?
Yes, I have a great honor to be here playing against this high-level tournament with the best players around the world, and being the only one Latin American is some part like an honor, some part is sad because unfortunately we have a lot of awesome players down there that could be represent even better than myself. But yes, that's more or less like this. It's an honor.
You've had a lot of fun, interesting matches. I mean, they were talking in the booth. It's been an exciting time listening to you play because you're very excitable, and it's incredible. Like, you'll do well, something will happen, and we'll just hear this loud clap from over here. They're in a completely different room than us, and they can still hear you clapping when it happens. Why don't you walk us through some of the really, really close calls that you've had so far this weekend?
Oh, yes. I have my first game in the Cube Draft. They made a top deck of Rude Awakening after just leaving that the Pedro Chroma and attacked the end for 1, and he just top decked the Rude Awakening like, oh my God. And I just have a very exciting game, the Thunder against the Czech player, the Oler. Yep, and he just countered by 2 finishers, and was the same time was very hard for me to, but that's Magic, that happens. We just want to win. For sure, that developed me as a player in the future. When I have the chance to go for the Pro Tour Atlanta and Grand Prix in São Paulo, I will be a better player for this. So I just have to thank for them.
Awesome. And I'll see you there at the Grand Prix. I'll be down there doing coverage. So, but I mean, you've been putting in a lot of work on Magic Online too. Like I know that you got started doing paper Magic, but you've been putting in a lot of work, many large, long-hour days getting prepared for this event here.
Yes, I just quit my job and go for like 12 to 14 hours per day. Unfortunately, all this training doesn't fit. I was 5'7", but as I said, as very nice for me to have that chance to play with these players when develop as a player and have that chance. And I need to continue practicing, not just on Magic Online, but also in the paper Magic to reach the Pro Tour in the highest level possible. Because it's so hard.
Yeah, and the thing is, we've got this, like you said, this is some of the best competition. Like, we've got some incredibly strong players playing here this weekend. And you've been doing better as well as the days have gone on. Like, the Cube record was just an unfortunate one. You had a few really, yeah, I know, it didn't happen. But, yeah, you're welcome. But you finished 2-2 in Modern yesterday, had a 2-1 booster draft today with a nice deck, actually. And then you're 1-1 as a point so far in the standard, is that correct?
So far. And something that are very funny about it, because my Cube draft, when I just drafted, I saw the deck and said, oh my God, they're going to do Soul 3-0, because it was such awesome. And after, like, when I just lose all, I look at, what did I did? What have I done? But it happens.
Yeah. And you know what? Like I said, you've turned it around. Things are going really well, and there's still 2 more rounds for you to finish out with a nice 3-1 record in standard and get yourself a little bit of practice. So it's been fun talking to you. Hope you continue to have a good time, and we'll definitely listen for your claps as the weekend goes on, okay?
Okay, deal. Thank you.
You're welcome. And back to the booth.
Thanks, Nate. That was awesome. I knew Bruno was going to be a good interview. Really animated guy, really passionate about Magic, and it was great to have a little chat with him. Now, I've got the standings, I've got the pairings, but first, a quick message.
Sign up for Magic Online today. Every new account is able to play in the new player sealed and draft events specially designed to help you start your Magic Online collection. Visit mtgo.com to download Magic Online. Ignite your competitive spark by playing in a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as the top Magic pros from around the world. Upcoming Grand Prix include Phoenix, Philadelphia, Nagoya, Minneapolis, and Warsaw. Visit wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule.
And welcome back to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. We're in San Francisco. Marshall Sutcliffe with Luis Scott Vargas. We got Randy Buehler in the red zone as well. Standings. Let's take a look at what we're looking at. We've got, what, 2 more rounds of standard here to go?
We do. We got 2 more rounds.
So 2 more rounds, and I'm seeing Lars Dom. You know, we just heard from Randy a few minutes ago. He's locked.
Yeah, he could lose these next 2, and he would still solidly be in the top 4.
Right, so he's sitting at 10-2, really running away with it. Now in the middle, though, we've got a pair of 8-4s, Tomas Gliad and Corey Lack of the United States there, and then 3 7-5s. Does the I might still be able to make it extend any further than 7-5? Those are that's the worst you could do.
Yeah, I mean, nobody with 6 losses is looking like they're going to make it.
Okay.
But it actually looks like, I mean, Bing Luke was right. People with the 9-5s are generally going to be in a good shape to make it.
Okay.
So I think if you miss at 9-5, you probably got a little unlucky. It'll depend on how these pairings go, since this next round, Lars Dom is playing as Corey Lack. So once again, everyone just is hoping for, that Lars Dom wins, except, of course, Corey Lack.
Why don't we take a look at our feature match that we have coming up? It's Dmitry Budakov. I interviewed him a little while ago.
It was awesome.
He is. We decided that he is a Magic Online machine sent from the future. Take a look at him there.
Yeah, Budakov, both his interviews this weekend have actually been fantastic.
They're awesome. Yeah, I really like Dmitry a lot, and he's got, well, he plays a lot of Magic. 14,000 matches logged with solid win percentages.
And according to BDM's math, that was 33,000 matches a year, right? Is that how it broke down?
So, and he, of course, is our returning 2012 Magic Online champion. He's the one that won it. Part of winning this tournament means that you get to play in the next one. Since he won last year, he's here.
Yeah, I mean, I did coverage at Worlds, and I saw him play. I got to actually do commentary on some of his matches when he was playing Modern, playing Gifts Rock.
Oh, yeah. He actually said he thought about bringing that here, but decided not to. He wanted to take the more conservative route. Let's take a look at his opponent. It's Unsi Alkio, somebody who's also had a lot of success, especially recently getting 4th at Pro Tour Born of the Gods.
Yeah, and I saw him play a really, really good quarterfinals against Shitian Lee. There.
Yes.
Having to, again, as I've said before, navigate around multiple Vidalcan shackles with his twin deck, which was tough.
Could have been tougher, but yeah, so he made it through, and he's actually put himself in a pretty darn good position here. Both of these players are sitting at 7-5. Now, we're assuming they need to win out.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are too. I mean,
like, are we talking about potentially an elimination match right now?
Well, this is an elimination match. Yeah, I mean, both of these players are right now are 7-5, and they have to go 9-5 to make top 4. Not a guarantee, but it's looking pretty good. So, but with a loss here, I think that's going to just about do it.
All right, so I mean, this is going to be a big one here. It looks like players are just about ready to go. All right, we'll send it down to the feature match area right now, and we'll get it sorted when we get down there.